Hello and welcome to The Conversation. I am Sibusisi Wenyanda, and on today's show, we're looking at a story that at face value may strike you as being hyper-local, but it certainly has the potential to impact Africa's largest nation and you and me by extension, of course. Now, governors and political leaders of Nigeria's southwest region have formed a semi-autonomous security network that they've called Operation Amotekun. This decision has been met with both applause and criticism, depending on which side of the sphere you're looking at. We get into the reasons behind this in today's episode of The Conversation. Do stay tuned. As always on The Conversation, we're joined by colleagues and experts. Today is no different. I am joined by two guests, Mr. Dipo Oyewole, who's a strategist and public affairs analyst, as well as Ikem Okuhu, who's a social commentator and the CEO of BRANDish, which is a marketing firm. We're going to get into it. Thank you so much for joining me today, gentlemen. Okay, so let's get into the topic of Operation Amotekun. If you are not in Nigeria, if you're not in Lagos, you might not understand the impact of this. So let's get into a little bit of that introduction. It's a security network that was launched by the governors of the southwest region of the country on the 9th of January. Now, some criticism against this network includes suspicions that it's an attempt by the southwest to assert itself within the Nigerian Federation, that it's a hidden plan to introduce state police or regional police through the back door, or perhaps an initial move towards Southwest's demand for restructuring and, in code terms, perhaps secession. According to a statement from the governors, Amotekun aims to be an antidote for the kidnapping and ritual killings in the region. They also argued that its complementary role would facilitate the fight against crime and help the statutory agencies become effective in their attempts to curb crime. Whatever your stance is on the network's formation, one cannot deny its impact on the rest of the country. Now, Bola Tinubu, who's APC's national leader, is quoted as saying, and I'm going to read from his statement here: "My position on Amotekun is not blind or uncritical. There are several organizational and functional aspects of the proposal that could cause problems if left unresolved. First, the stated mission is information gathering by civilians. Such tasks are always and everywhere best done in low-key fashion. Some aspects of Amotekun seem to undermine rather than enhance this function. Second, equipping Amotekun with shadowy paraphernalia may cause the public to misconstrue the role, incorrectly believing its mandate is more expansive than it is. This possible disconnect could impede the good aims of the program." So that's essentially the gist of what he was looking to say. Now, my first question is going to be, both gentlemen, we're sitting here in Lagos and we perhaps know better than somebody else on the continent might understand some of the gravity of the security concerns we face here. What, according to you, are the main reasons, Dipo, for the formation of the security force?
Well, primarily, like the governors have said, it's to ensure that security of lives and property are further emphasized in the southwestern part of Nigeria, which in recent time has been quite abysmal, if I may use that word, because there have been ritual killings, there have been kidnappings, there have been armed robberies, there have been banditries. Last year was riddled with a lot of stories of people who couldn't travel from point A to point B within a 200-kilometer radius without having to have some fear for their lives. Saying that we're in our own nation and we are afraid to move freely, it's something that is quite unacceptable. So personally, for me, I think that the Amotekun initiative is quite welcome. And of course, they do need to do one or two things to make it a bit more practical. But I think that I see no reason why it shouldn't come to stay.
And then what about the questions around how it will relate with existing police forces that are provided and under the control of the state? How will that work? Is that perhaps what some of these discussions we've been seeing happening are looking to address?
No discussion will happen necessarily, but I must say that Amotekun came into our space because of the failure of the national security agencies and arms. If the Nigerian police were doing their job, there won't be any need to duplicate this at the regional and state level. If the civil defense, as they are considered at the federal level, were doing their jobs, there was no need, because this thing costs money. And at the state level, we're looking at how to apply resources to make stronger impact on the people. Nobody wants to duplicate what works well. If the police was up to their job, was responsibly responding to the demands of their office as an institution, there wouldn't have been any need for this. So these conversations are necessary, because if you don't force it, if you don't initiate it, there won't be any engagement that will say, okay, Amotekun, this is where you start and you will stop. And then police, this is where your supervisory role will begin and end. I was following the statement by Tinubu, and I must say, well, because of his position as the national leader of the party, he has to be seen to be at a certain, to strike a certain balance. But a lot of the things he said are actually what I'm sure the governors who initiated this thing anticipated, even before going all out to set it up. We are not safe here. Nowhere in the country can be adjudged safe except maybe as Rock and maybe some government houses. We need to take steps to protect our people, to protect our resources, to protect the vulnerable among us who can't afford to have police protection and military escorts around us. So the state governors are right. And I know that once the conversation has started, like it has started happening, you see the minister who initially kicked against it recant, and
the initial
so
statement.
that is the conversation. But if they hadn't taken this step to take the bull by the horn, to take the discussion to the doorsteps of the federal government, there will be this engagement that will eventually ensure that we have an Amotekun and replicas all over the country.
I actually wanted to come to that, because then the other question might be, should we not be remedying perhaps the incapacity of state forces? But then on the other hand, we do know that there's an existence of such forces in the north and some of the southeast as well.
Yes.
So one would also wonder, if this isn't out of the ordinary, why is there particular criticism around the formation of this southwest force?
Yes, so that's the question I've been asking as well on various platforms, to say that why is there so much noise about Amotekun? Like you rightly said, there's a counterpart agency, so to speak, in the north, thriving very well, not just operating in an intelligence gathering capacity. They're actually law enforcement, they are armed, and no one is saying anything about them. Now we're talking about Amotekun coming on board and being an intelligence gathering agency, and then there's so much noise about it. So this is what I've also asked people. What if the Southwestern governors had come together and say that they were going to have a coalition to tackle something in the education sector? Would we have this much noise? What about if it was in the health sector? Would we have this much noise? So what's the problem with people who we have elected to ensure that we have security of lives and property coming together to say that, you know what, the existing state police, like he rightly said, they have failed in every level by whatever metric or data you want to use to measure it. They have failed to secure lives and property adequately as they should have, or as they should be doing in the southwestern part of Nigeria. That is why we're coming together to put together this initiative. So why should someone else from another part of the country have an issue with me securing my region? What's the problem with that? So,
but I'm going to go back to the question. I'm going to go back to the question here, playing a bit of devil's advocate, I suppose. Perhaps the issue here is the concern around, as you mentioned earlier as well, Ikem, that other states might replicate this, and then before we know it, we're creating a bit of a secessionist trend. And then what does that mean for the country's history, which we know has had a bit of a violent, in fact not a bit, a violent and a divisive tinge? What does that say for the potential for this to be the case moving forward?
I think the problem, that is me speaking because it is me. The problem is not because about states, it's because of the regional spread, that the entire Southwest came together to create one quasi-security outfit, as it were. All over the country, this thing is already in existence.
Yes.
I spent 18 months in Enugu, that's my state of origin, and we have Enugu State Neighborhood and Vigilante that has been functioning there for the past 4 years. In Anambra State, it's been there. In Imo State, it's been there. There are all these things replicated across all the states. But I think the concern was actually because the entire region came together to start this, and then those who are afraid of restructuring, I don't have any problem with restructuring if it will make Nigeria more efficient and then responsive to the people. But that's another issue. The concern was the spread that Lagos, Ogun, Oyo, Ondo, Osho, and then which other one remains? These 6 states came together to form one single security outfit with a central command.
Yeah.
So that's what started the suspicion. But then, anybody who also has followed the conversations around some of these issues across the Southwest, and knows that the path of this thing moves from Ogun State, and then you see them crisscrossing into Ondo and other states. You know that it makes more sense to have a central command and even collaborative relationships with those in other states, so that you can't commit a crime and Amotekun drives you down to Edo State, and then Edo State drives into Anambra State, and Anambra State drives you into Imo State, and then that person, those groups who are doing that thing, will still be in existence. So we need something wider than just small units in states. And those who are worried about the spread, I think what they should do is open themselves to cooperating with these people, sharing information, sharing ideas. And I think even the structure of the Southwest Zone subjected them reasonably to the national police.
Yes.
So the fear, the concern shouldn't really have been there. And even if it was there, like I keep saying, they shouldn't have voiced it to the point of generating this kind of controversy and noise, because if they had done their jobs very well, I don't want to pass one police checkpoint, one Amotekun checkpoint, and then one Hisba checkpoint. I want to have a central command, and if I report a matter, I know that it's with the police.
Yes.
Not have layers of security agencies doing the same thing.
Replicating duties.
But when one fails to live up to its billings, to live up to its status, I have to look for alternatives until we now see a police doing better, being more responsive, and generally not seeing citizens as victims.
Okay, I'm going to have to cut you off right there. But when we come back, we're going to take a look also at what people on the street have been saying and what people on social media have been saying about this. We also are going to have a bit of a discussion about the timing also of this formation. Remember, you can tell us what your thoughts are on social media. We are at News Central TV. Remember to use our hashtag #NCTheConversation to weigh in. After this, we dig a little bit deeper into this, and we of course take a look at what you had to say about the formation of this network in the Southwest region. Stay with us. You're welcome back. This is The Conversation, and I'm Sibusisiwe Nyanda. If you're just joining us, we're still discussing the formation of a security network in Nigeria's southwest region named Amotekun, and what that means for the country's political dynamics moving forward. Remember, this is a conversation with you, so share your views with us at News Central TV. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Use our hashtag also, TheConversationNC. Speaking of social media, we want to take a look at what you had to say. We first had a poll on Twitter, and we were asking whether people are for or against the formation of this. So let's take a look at what people had to say. Before we get into that poll, actually, we're just going to keep a bit of a drum roll and suspense. Let's take a look at tweets on this very issue. Okay, so the first one here coming from the DP, Prof. Yemi Oshibajo, who says fruitful and unanimous resolutions were made on the way forward in a meeting today with Southwest governors, the Attorney General of the Federation and the Inspector General of Police over the controversy surrounding the Amotekun initiative. Let's take a look at some more. Still from him, he says the meeting was an instance of the governors who asked to see President Muhammadu Buhari. It was agreed that the structure of Amotekun should also align with the community policing strategy of the federal government, something we have been discussing here as well. Let's see few more from ordinary people like us. I hope Buhari will not come back and cancel this agreement as he did to your former appointments as regards the DSS director and the former Chief Justice of Nigeria. Nigerians never without their spice. And then this one here says, all this madness will create more problems for Nigeria in future. What is needed is to reform the NPF and the security structure. Any other thing you guys are doing is just to create employment. And that's a bit of a thread there, because somebody responded to, we lost that tweet, but essentially, okay, last one. Don't be fooled, Nigerians. We know how things ended for the DSS boss appointed and CJN sworn in by Oshibajo. This will go the same way. Federal police will arrest Amotekun hunters if they apprehend herders destroying farms, stealing or raping. Okay, so a bit of a cynical remark there.
There's skepticism around.
A bit of skepticism.
If the Nigerian police force will actually allow them thrive, which for me, I think like we have been able to establish, and it is quite obvious that there's a huge failure on the side of the Nigerian police force. It's not perceived, it is what is a reality. So I would expect that as an organization that they look inward and see what the challenges are and how they can make them, how they can stop those things from happening and make the operations a lot better. But unfortunately, that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of pushback, a lot of resistance to Amotekun, an agency that's supposed to complement their own operations. Because, I mean, if we have some challenges in our organization and then we have another body come on board saying they're going to provide some form of intelligence support, I think it's something that should be welcomed with open arms. But like we keep asking, what is the problem? Why do you feel threatened? Is it because of the coalition? Is it because it's cuts across party lines now? Because all the southwestern states aren't governed by APC governors or PDP governors. It cuts across various parties. But for them to be able to set aside partisan politics and say that the security of lives and property is important and we need to put this together, it's something that should go a long way to let people know that this is quite important. And if you look at the map, I mean, I've been to some southwestern states. Ogun State alone borders like 3 states. Borders Lagos, some parts of it, you could get it to Benin Republic from Ogun State. There is a part of Ogun State I had been to that I was told that if I keep walking on that street 50 meters ahead, I'll be into Oyo State. I turned back, okay, because I had no business being there, but that's a separate conversation. So that just says that it's important because of how interwoven everyone is with marriage, with culture, with commerce, that some crimes will not be committed in Lagos and then you run into Ogun State hoping that you'll be safe. But because we have collaborators across the borders among the states, you should be apprehended and justice should be served. Okay, so I hear that, but then let's also speak to some of the skepticism that we'd seen on social media. I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine here, and he told me about a Nigerian proverb that says, if you're seeing a masquerade, there's somebody in the background playing the drums. And he essentially was alluding to the fact that, you know, we have the 2023 elections around the corner, and perhaps this is also somewhat politically motivated and could find itself good intentions on paper on the one hand, but on the other hand, once that machine starts to run, we see it being taken back into the hands of perhaps the people whose idea it was to begin with.
But if you go back to what he just said, he cut across party lines.
Yes.
So if it is the APC that is engineering this thing against 2023, they have obviously now have PDP collaborators. If it is the PDP that has started this thing, they obviously have APC collaborators, meaning that there will be anti-party activities, as they're saying, either at the level of APC or PDP, depending on who it is envisaged to favor. So whatever is the misgivings, is the suspicions, it pales in significance when you look at it against the background of the security challenges we have had, not just in the Southwest, across the country. Everywhere. We need this thing to be spread. Anybody, there's no even drugs that we take, prescription drugs have side effects. If they say take 2 tablets 3 times a day and you take 6 3 times a day, you are likely to die. In some areas, some people may want to, you know, maneuver this thing to favor themselves, but it cannot be cloud overriding advantages, which is to have a much more secure environment for business and for people, for even socialization. I know when people just wake up and say they are going to see Oshun Grove and then they are going to see Ojudoba Festival or Oshogbo. Now, even if you go to Kaduna, the other day it was reported that a train stopped people in one village. They alighted to join their cars, and some people just came around that place and picked them up. If policemen were there and ready to work, that thing wouldn't happen. If there's a local security outfit to contain those guys, they would have stopped them in their tracks there and then. So it's not a question of what is, it may be manipulated by some selfish people. It's actually what it can be done, what it can help us solve now. Those other things, if we start seeing the other manifestations, the other manipulations, we'll continue solving them, because this cannot provide all the answers.
Okay,
as it is now.
Okay, then just one final question. How do we then quell the concerns about what some suspect are ethnic undertones as well in this formation? How do we ensure moving forward, if this, is really supposed to be, the unity of this region and really moving forward in terms of ensuring that the people's security is first, what do we do to quell some of these concerns? We're seeing on social media some people taking complete advantage of the narrative and turning it into something I don't imagine is being discussed behind closed doors where the deputy president and the governors are.
Exactly. So I think for me it is a bit mischievous, because you can't say that I'm protecting my home or my estate or where I live, and then you live probably 2 streets away and then you have an issue with that. If you have no business coming to my estate for any reason, why do you have a problem with me having a security guard there? So I think it is quite unfounded, and like the authorities that are in charge of Amotekun have told them that there is no reason for them to assume that it does have any ethnic undertone, because it's supposed to stop crime. Criminals don't want to know if you're Yoruba, if you're Igbo from the north before they kidnap you. They just pick you up and that's it. But what happens when these Amotekun operatives are there to stop it? Would you come out and say, okay, you know what, I'm from this part of the country. Oh, I'm not from the southwest, but the Amotekun agents were able to rescue me. Is that the narrative we want to be pushing? So I think it is quite unnecessary, because primarily it is to secure the lives and property of every single person in the southwest, irrespective of where you're from, what you do, and as long as what you do is legal anyway. But it's irrespective of where you're from in the country or from outside the country. Okay.
Rapid fire questions. These are really just yes or no questions. The first question for me would be, do you see this taking off successfully before the end of this year?
Yes.
Yes.
Would you like to see this being replicated across the rest of the country?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's all we have time for in this edition of The Conversation. Always feels like we don't have enough time, but remember, we can continue on social media. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Use our hashtag #NCTheConversation and let us know what you think. Just for the record, we didn't get to see the results of the poll on Twitter, but I will tell you, the vast majority of you said you would like to see it. 0% said that they would not like to see Amotekun. And unfortunately, we do have an apathetic youth on social media. Some people said they really couldn't be bothered. Okay, there it is. 78.6% for it. Nobody said they're against it. Nobody said not now. And then somebody else said, I actually don't care. Anyway, that's all we have time for in this edition. Thank you so much to my guests for joining me. And remember, you can find us on social media, and you can find me again same time this week. Thank you for tuning in from me. It's goodbye for now.